If agriculture grows, the economy grows. That's the view of many in the society. It also stands true based on figures from the Statistical Institute of Jamaica Statin and the Planning Institute of Jamaica, the PIOJ. But with the number of pest diseases and natural disasters that affect farmers on an annual basis, how much more can the sector bear? Hi, and welcome to Groundings. I'm your host, Shane Masters. On this program, we seek to look at the issues which affect the agricultural sector and ways on how it can be improved. Today, we are joined by President of the Jamaica Agricultural Society, the JAS, Lenworth Fulton, as we look into the effects of the Beet-Army worm on crops. But before we get into the discussion, here's a look at the Beet-Army worm. The Beet-Army worm originated in Southeast Asia. It was first discovered in North America about 1876 when it was found in Oregon in the United States. It reached Florida in 1924. In Jamaica, the Beet-Army worm represents destruction for onion and scallion. Since the 1990s, agricultural production in St. Elizabeth has suffered from several major outbreaks of the Beet-Army worm, which have seen increases in pest activity, frequency and severity, and so threaten the progress achieved by the initiatives for improving productivity.
Big problem too, because can't find anything to control them.
I'm coming a season life. Certain time I'm gone. And they depend on the white scale and I know them come and fight.
So we didn't take you when they come to white scale.
You can't be just take that now.
I'm a room that I touch farmer, for your farm. I'm a room I touch for your plant, scale and all these things. Because them don't really have no special time. One time they have special time, not them the right through the year.
There you have it. Mr. Fulton, thanks for joining us on Groundings.
Thank you for having me too. Yes.
Now, the Beet-Army worm. There were serious impacts for farmers in 2017. Tell us about that.
It's a very serious pest that, from I was the CEO of RADA, we have fought with everything we could, but it has to do with the farmers' preparedness to do proper field sanitation. We do try to control it with insecticides, but we'll have to educate our farmers that when you're finished reaping from the field, then you should clean up the field, which is field sanitation. If it is possible, to plow the land, turn the soil over to expose them, because the hot spots are really in the Manchester area, the Plowden, South Manchester, where it is a prevalent crop down there is pumpkin and sweet potato and so on. Right through to the South St. Elizabeth, the Comapan area, the Yardley Chase, and in those areas where you have onion and scallions and melons and so on, which makes good food for Beet-Army worm. Because of the lack of proper field sanitation, we are losing an estimate of $140 million per year. That's significant money for our farmers. So yes, we need to revisit, and we need to do more training and more public education, which would involve various other types of posters and highlights of the dangers of the Beet-Army worm.
No, you mentioned the fact of training. How will we reach all the farmers?
We train them in groups, and that is one of the ways that the Jamaica Agricultural Society helps. Because we do put farmers in groups. We have farmers in various groups in the associated branch societies, and RADA will train those particular groups. But there are other ways that we can train them by using electronic methods, by using sending messages and text messages to them. In the same way, we would send the messages to Irish potato farmer that there's a bad weather ahead and they should spray and so on. So therefore, there are other methods that we should try to employ in training the farmers and helping them to control this very serious insect.
Let's go back to 2017. What was RADA's stance when you were CEO with farmers and with the government, the Ministry of Agriculture, in that?
Well, there was one missing gap, which was sort of a follow-up whether electronic, whether you're going to use some other method to know when they start to multiply. Sometime when we get the message, a farmer would have abandoned the field to plant next year because of how we plant based on weather. So the farmer might would have grown an acre of melon and he reaped that out, but melon would be left in the field which would not be economical to reap anymore. And they might switch to another piece of land. They might switch this time to livestock, waiting on the weather pattern to plant again. But during that period, the insect would have multiplied significantly. We need to close that gap. We need to have our extension officers and community persons, the volunteers, to really inspect these fields readily to know when the multiplication. And since we know the hotspots, we need to do more vigilance in identifying the beginning of the breeding period for these insects.
You mentioned bridging the gap. What does that entail?
That entails more field visit, more contact with that farmer and those farmers in those local, with our technical persons, both from RADA, from the Forage Club, and from Jamaica Agricultural Society.
When we look at the BeetArmy worm, its impact, how severe would you say that is?
It is significant because they feed on everything. The only thing that you would say they don't feed on so ready is like thyme and those other economic crops. But like onions, they love it. Scallion, they love it. Melon, pumpkin, sweet potato, they eat everything.
So is that one of the concerns for farmers, why, or for the Ministry of Agriculture, why we import so many of those things, the scallion and the onions?
One of which, what many of our importation also spring from the fact that most of these farmers do not have irrigation. So during the dry spell, we have to sometimes do some importation. And two, because we haven't had enough storage to store during the time of plenty. I'm happy to say that the irrigation system has been vastly improved with the Essex Valley irrigation system. And here I must congratulate the government and the National Irrigation Commission for putting in a major irrigation system in St. Elizabeth which could do up to 4,000 acres of land, for mostly where these crops are grown.
When you look at South St. Elizabeth, we know that water is one of the main issues in that section. Does the Essex Water Valley system, will it be sufficient for all farmers?
It can be sufficient for all, but I think a good 2,500, 3,000 farmers will benefit, and the adjoining lands that irrigation system can be added to. Private lands too, if you're within the reach of their distribution lines. So yes, that area will do well, and will pick up with the irrigation system in the New Forest Duff House area, where you have an agri-park, and that agri-park is also affected by the same BeetArmy worm. So we have to be very careful now in its control so as not to impoverish our farmers. It's very expensive to do farming.
How can we control it, other than when we look at the field maintenance, the turning over of the soil? Is there any other way?
You do have traps that you can set, which is a bait which attracts them, and they will come into that trap, drop in some water, and that can control them to some extent. You also can use various insecticides to control them. But the best control is cultural practices, and to educate the farmers that, listen, when you reap that which is left in the field and become uneconomical to reap, you should still go and reap that in order that you will secure your next crop and prevent the rapid breeding of this insect.
All right, we take a break now from Groundings. I'm your host, Shane Masters. When we come back, we look at what the JAS is doing and what's the government's plan. Are there any discussions going on currently? Welcome back to Groundings. I'm Shane Masters, and we are having a wonderful discussion on the Beet-Army worm. It's not good news for farmers, but we're having a discussion. We want to find out in this segment, what is the Jamaica Agricultural Society doing, and is there any dialogue currently taking place with the Ministry of Agriculture to get this pest under control? And we have joining us the president of JAS, Mr. Lenworth Fulton. Mr. Fulton, thanks for staying with us. Discussions with the government on this Beet-Army worm.
Well, the government has done a lot from over the last 10, 15 years to not only control the Beet-Army worm, but to control most pests and diseases that affect both crops and livestock. But a lot is left up to the farmer. And the farmer must now understand that they're private business people and they have their own future in their own hands to do other things, and how well they manage their field and how well they get information from various sources. They have to learn to go on the internet, they have to learn to Google things. The extension officer can go this much and no further. There's probably one extension officer in some area to up to 3,000 farmers. Maybe the best ratio we have is like 1 to 2,300 farmers. So we must now rely on technology. We must now rely on our cell phones, which is a good piece of technology, to take a photograph of anything you see looking strange in your field, and to send that message on mostly to RADA, that has a very good technical team in doing the assessment. The Jamaica Agricultural Society is stronger at advocating and lobbying and educating the farmer. And so we have been in dialogue with these farmers, and we work closely with all government agencies to improve agriculture in this country.
Have you sought to get any help or assistance from overseas institutions?
Yes, we do, and we rely on RADA for that connection. RADA does have a technical division which is led by very, very good officers. They are well trained, they are well educated, with good experience, and RADA also feed us the information. We linked with various institutions abroad, and the chemical input companies have a great role to play. There are many of them in Jamaica, and they all have extension officers that work in the field with us. So I think it is not for a want of trying or a want of well-educated, well-trained people, but the pest is here, it become endemic, and in the summer, in the hot period, we have hot spots, like, as I said, in South St. Elizabeth, part of Manchester, and in parts of Clarendon and St. Anne. So you'll have the pests springing up in those areas. And what we need is rapid information from farmers so that we can go to the hotspot and advise how to do proper field sanitation.
In my research for this program, I realized that it was once seasonal. The Beet-Army worm was once seasonal.
Yes.
It's no longer seasonal.
It is no longer seasonal, and that is a direct result of poor field sanitation. As I said, onion, for example, you will reap, but every acre of onion you can probably go and plow, turn over the soil, and find a couple hundred pounds still lying under there. That with good weather will spring out like scallion and so forth. And these are natural food for the Beet-Army worm. So we have to take more precautions. Maybe there could be some incentive to plow the land now and to leave it fallow so that your next planting it will even be easier. Or to go through with another crop which will be compulsory, that you plow and do field preparation, which would remove the food that these pests would feed on. So there could be some programs to look on to assist in the whole control of this pest.
And I remember one of the things that was said earlier a few years ago was that messages to farmers, just like how Digicel sends out messages or Flow sends out messages to about other companies, the agriculture sector would be sending out messages. Did you hear anything about that? And if so, what is the update on that?
We do, and I refer back to RADA, which we set up the system. We do train farmers, and at one point, every extension officer has in their possession a tablet, so that they could send the message from in the field once they can find a hotspot to get their system working. So that is a system there. We do track our extension officer, and when I was there, we have electronic itinerary. So if you hear about something in a particular area, you could go and pull up that particular extension officer and look on the itinerary where they are and give them the electronic message, so they move there immediately to give advice and to see what is happening. I think more needed to be done, and I think we need to say to everybody in Jamaica now in their household would have a radio, a TV, and a cell phone. There's hardly a household without it. We need to use them more. And of course, our farmers are getting younger. There was this old argument that our farmers are average age is 65 and so on. That's no longer the case. It is trending down. It's probably in the high 40s, early 50s now. And it's hard, probably less than 10% of our farmers would not have had the benefit of a secondary school education.
Yes.
Because everybody in Jamaica, if they need a secondary school education, there's a secondary school place for them somewhere in the country. So we need to use the system more. And I say in the hotspot, there is no reason why we shouldn't go further to give lectures in schools, give lectures in various institutions. If they're at the health clinic, you can give them various information because they are farmers. Yes. They're only waiting to get well to get back on their farms. And they are business people, so we need to work with them at that level now.
And I agree with you on the point that we need to get into the schools, because if you realize we have 4-H clubs,
yes,
but not many students are in the 4-H clubs, taking up the mantle to be in the 4-H clubs because they don't see it as a vital part of their school life.
Well, yes, but the 4-H club still puts out figure now that they have close to 100,000 clubites out there. And like any other profession, people generally come down on agriculture. It would still be probably 1 or less than 1% of those students who would be engineers, doctors, lawyers, teachers. We aim to follow the developed country. If we have 5% of our people going into agriculture, we could adequately feed the nation. You wouldn't find a situation where a whole student body would go. They choose other activities, environmental activities, and so on. And that's quite fine. It is to make our training more effective and to say to this student, the largest companies in Jamaica, apart from probably a few banks, would, the second tier would, an insurance company, the second or third tier companies would be agricultural companies, agricultural-based companies. And it still employ the most people out there in rural Jamaica. It hires the most vehicles, most trucks are linked to agriculture. And the money exchange at the Coronation Market and all our parochial market is probably equal that is happening at the Bank of Jamaica. So it's still a very vibrant area. It is how we teach. But when I was going to school, way back then in primary school, teachers tell us that agriculture is not good because they see it as punishment, and that's how they were trained. So a lot of our dilemma lies with that teacher training college, how they prepare their teachers and the mindset they give these teachers, that the only thing which is necessary is the academic, maths, English, and arithmetic, and so on. Very important though those are, there are some other issues of the career path that would lie close to you in your rural districts. And as you know, agriculture is a vestige of rural life, and we will not get out of it.
In the next 5 to 10 years, how do you see the agricultural sector with this pest, the Beet-Army worm?
We might very well see more genetic engineering to make those sterile. We have had pests like like many other pests around the world and so forth are made sterile by breeding a type of similar type that would surrender them to usefulness, you know. So there are technology that will come to either trap them or better forms of chemical that would control them. But one has to be careful because what they're eating is food. So you can't over poison them because you'll poison us too.
Yeah.
So we hope that the University of the West Indies and UTech and all these universities would be having young scientists studying these pests, including the mosquito, which is killing us all, and to find ways of controlling those pests. And I'm certain there are answers in science, but we have to pay them better and pay young people better to go in there so that they can, you know, leave their homes, go to labs, come back, live a good life just like anybody else. But there will be a way, and we're doing more and more protective agriculture now. That means doing agriculture under cover in terms of shade house by using plastic mulch and giving greater control of the field, which will enhance field sanitation and detection. So I do know we'll not sit idle by and let them take over our food.
Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you, Taro.
There you have it from the president of the Jamaica Agricultural Society, Mr. Lenworth Fulton, talking to us about the BeetArmy worm and also a broader aspect of the agricultural sector. On behalf of the production team, thank you so much for watching this, the first episode of Groundings right here on the Jamaica News Network, JNN. See you next time.